We're going to start off today with a little recap of some of the announcements we made at the Google Cloud Platform Live event like a week ago. So first of all, I just want to ask a few questions of you guys. So first of all, who's done a Google search today? Show of hands, please. All right, so who of you are using Google Apps for Business? Small number, okay. All right, so who is familiar with the Google Cloud Platform? Who's heard of it? Okay, so who's heard of Google App Engine? Maybe a little bit more, actually, so that's good. All right, so who's actually using Google App Engine? Who's running a production application today? So got a few people there. Okay, so we want to give a little bit of an introduction, first of all, into what the Google Cloud Platform contains, for those of you who aren't as familiar with it. So on the left-hand side, we have our computer offerings. So we have App Engine, which is a platform as a service where you can run Python, PHP, Java, and Go code in a completely managed runtime. So you just upload your code. Google handle the scaling, the monitoring, the logging. We wear the pages so that you guys don't have to. On top of that, we also have Compute Engine, which is our infrastructure as a service offering. And that's very similar to virtual machines that you get from other providers, where you ask for a server, you manage it, you maintain it yourself. And we're going to talk a little bit later on about how we see that that's a choice that you shouldn't have to make. In terms of storage, we have Google Cloud Storage, which is blob storage for you just upload files into it. So 11.9's durability. We have serving of those files as well. So if you upload files to the cloud, we can serve them out to you on Google's worldwide network. Cloud SQL allows you to run MySQL in the cloud. And Cloud Data Store is something that we're very proud of. It's an extension of the data service that we use inside Google, which we can share out across all of our products, so you can get access to the same data layer replicated worldwide, very, very fast NoSQL data store. Some of the application services, and we're going to touch on both of these today. BigQuery is our query application for running big data across petabytes of data. And instead of looking at the traditional MapReduce model where you might spin something up with Hive and maybe get cluster running in 20 minutes and then query sort of half an hour after that, this is something we'll get results in seconds. And it really does change what you can do with data if you can really cut the time it takes to get that. Cloud Endpoints is something else we're very proud of. Cloud Endpoints enables you to set a method and just say, I want to expose this as a REST endpoint from my App Engine application. And then you can generate mobile client libraries for Java, for running on Android, for iOS, and then also for the web. And so just by defining a method, you can say, this is something I want to put in my application and very easily build a mobile app. And Jens and I are going to do that live on stage in about 10-15 minutes time. So we'll show you just how easy that is. So I'm just going to start by introducing some of the highlights from the last year. So in compute, one thing I wanted to point out is that we now can support 1 million requests per second. So in Compute Engine, our load balancing, unlike other providers who, when you turn on load balancing, it says, all right, I'm going to provision a few servers here. We use the same load balancing infrastructure that we use for Google.com, that we use for YouTube. So this is shared load balancing infrastructure that can instantly go from 0 to 1 million requests per second. Compute Engine went GA in December, so it's now available. We've launched recently Red Hat and SUSE Enterprise Linux, and Windows is also now available on GCE. In storage, something important to point out is that all data in cloud storage is encrypted at rest. We have our persistent disks, which are network attached, replicated, and redundant, so you don't need to build a RAID array yourself out of persistent disks. They come redundant out of the box. And we've just recently gone GA with Cloud SQL as well. And a whole lot more. So we've just launched HIPAA support for healthcare data in the public cloud. Endpoints, we mentioned, has gone GA. We have had some major updates to BigQuery, and we're going to talk about some more of them today as well. So we have 4.75 million active applications on the cloud platform today. We do 28 billion HTTP requests per day in App Engine. And that's interesting to put into scale. The average server maybe sort of 85, 86 million. Popular sites in the hundreds of millions. Wikipedia does 2.6 billion requests a day. App Engine in the whole does 10 times the amount of traffic that Wikipedia does. We store and retrieve 6.3 trillion operations from cloud users on our data store per month. And you may know that the data store was originally part of the App Engine application. That's now been exposed through our APIs so that you can call that from your own code, you can call that from Compute Engine instances, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what you can do with that later on with big data as well. So, you will probably know that we cut prices last week. This quote's from before that. So, InfoWorld magazine did a little survey, and the benchmarks they did said that not only were our servers the fastest, they were also the cheapest overall in order to run their benchmark workloads. And we're going to be publishing some benchmark suites in the next few months as well, so that you'll be able to take these benchmarks and run them both on our cloud and on competitors to see how things really do add up. But cloud is still too hard. There's two problems that we want to really sort of focus on today. Pricing is complex. So you have to have a PhD in economics in order to be able to predict how you want to do pricing on a number of cloud providers. See some nods from Bob in the front row. Current clouds also force trade-offs in design. We talked a little bit before. You can choose to run your managed code on App Engine today, or you can choose to install an operating system on Compute Engine. And that's a choice that we don't think that people should have to make. I want to tell you about how we've solved those problems. So first of all, the pricing. Public cloud prices are on the way down, but not very quickly. So the general price sort of averaged across other public cloud providers, well, they say, well, we drop price every now and then. It's sort of on average about sort of 6 to 8% per year. But if you think about Moore's law, which very famously says that the number of transistors that you can fit on a chip double approximately every 18 months. So you can assume that the price, if you want to keep the number the same, should halve over the 18-month period. So when you factor in the cost of people and all the other things you want to run a good cloud environment, we actually see that the hardware costs are dropping to the range of 20 to 30% annually. So there's a large difference between those two lines in terms of what the market has been done. So we don't think prices are falling fast enough. So two things we announced that were last Thursday. They launched 1st of April, so available right now, on-demand price reductions and sustained use discounts, which I'll tell you about. So, on-demand price reductions, first of all. We cut all the prices of our instances, which were already the cheapest on-demand price, even in the industry, dropped 32%. You'll notice that it didn't take long for our competitors to make similar moves, only obviously on the things where we match. There are a number of places where competitors decided, well, we run a slightly different shaped service. We're only going to price match Google on the ones that matter. But we don't see this as a one-off event. This is something we see. Cloud pricing needs to match that curve indefinitely. So this isn't we're correcting the market once. This is a new philosophy that we're bringing out where we will continue to match that Moore's law curve with pricing in the cloud. Cloud storage, we dropped the price to a flat 2.6 cents per gigabyte no matter what you store. It was previously in the range of 8 or 9 cents per gigabyte. It's now 2.6 no matter what you store. That price is cheaper than the tiered rate, even after the price drop of our largest competitor. So you can put in a gigabyte of data, you can put in hundreds of petabytes of data, you will pay a flat 2.6 cent per gigabyte. Or if you want what we call durable reduced availability, where we store it in less data centers, it's down to 2 cents per gigabyte. Our BigQuery engine previously was $35 per terabyte. We've dropped that down to $5. We really want to get more people doing big data on Google. We want to get unlocked insight into the data which is stored in your cloud storage. So we've knocked that down, and we also have reservations for BigQuery pricing now. So if you are doing substantial data throughput, if you want to reserve, for example, 5 to 50 gigabytes per second of data processing, you might be looking at a price of sort of $80,000 a month if you're looking at that kind of scale with a MapReduce cluster and another industry provider. With our reservation pricing, we now bring that down to the range of $20,000 per month, which is 75% less expensive than the alternatives. So to recap, we have shattered the industry in terms of pricing. We've come in and said 32% cheaper, but that's not enough on our compute engine pricing. The original promise of the cloud was that it was on demand. It was low cost. You don't need to think up front. You don't need to say, all right, well, in the traditional world, you'd go out and you'd buy some tin, you'd place an order, and you'd be like, okay, that's what I'm running now. And if you think about the way that other cloud providers work, it's kind of the same. You say, all right, well, I'm going to buy a reservation, and I'm going to run this for 3 years, and hang on, I'm just doing exactly the same thing, but I'm just paying slightly differently than I used to. So we find that that's reinforcing the wrong behavior. If you know up front what your workload is going to look like in 3 years' time, then congratulations, you're doing better than I am for starters. But the promise of the cloud was that you wouldn't need to make all those decisions. You wouldn't need to reserve things. That's an example of how much it might cost to run an instance. How do you know? How do you make that choice? What percentage of time you're going to be running? Some information you will know up front. Others you will say, well, I'm not really sure. We don't think that's a choice you should have to make anymore. We're going to offer the lowest price, the best price, with no upfront payments, no lock-in, and no complexity. So what we've launched is sustained use discounts. So on the top there, you can see our previous on-demand price, which was 10.5 cents per hour to run. We've dropped down now 32%, which is 7.5 cents per hour. And that's if you're running an instance between sort of 0 and 25% of the time of the month. So once you've gone over that threshold, we just lower the price for you. We don't make you reserve anything up front. We don't make you say you can only reserve this particular type. We don't say, oh no, you've changed region. Your reservation was only in 1A and you've purchased something in 1B. We will account if you run a machine for a third of the month and then turn that one off and then start a new machine and run it for a third of the month and do that. That is effectively the same as having run a machine for 100% of the month. So we will give you that on-demand price. Overall, that works out to a 53% price drop on instances from our previous on-demand price if you're running them 24/7, which I know a lot of people do. So not only are we dropping our prices substantially, we've also changed the model for pricing in terms of automatic discounts for sustained usage. We really want to help realize what the promise was for cloud computing originally. Utility, low on demand, simple pricing, predictable, and in line with Moore's law. But cloud's still too hard. Today, you've got to make trade-offs. You've got to work around the weaknesses and the limitations of the providers that are on the marketplace. You have to make choices. Do I want to very quickly build something to have a low time to market, or do I want something that will be scalable if I get to the success that I hope to have? Do I want to have the flexibility of running a virtual machine and controlling everything, or do I want the automatic management of having Google look after that for me? Do I want to have big data where I'm processing petabytes of information, or do I want to be ingesting that information in real time and able to respond to it quickly? These are all choices, points on a line that you have to think about today. And we want to change the or in that sentence to and. We want to make it so that you can do both of these things, and here's how. So, developer productivity, time to market, and running at scale. We want to be able to launch you on the platform when you start that will take you to complete scalability. We want you to be able to use the tools that you know and love, deployments fast, and we also want to be able to fix and isolate issues in a safe way, even when you're running in production. And that's the demo that Jens and I are going to do after these slides, so we'll show you that. Infrastructure or platform services. You have the choice between flexibility or management. Why not both? So we've launched managed virtual machines, which we'll tell you a little bit more about later as well, which offer you the flexibility of running Compute Engine with the automation of App Engine, with the productivity, with the logging and management, and with Google wearing the pages so you don't have to. So it provides the best of both worlds. You have all of the flexibility of being able to run your own code, specify your own binaries, break out of that sandbox. With BigQuery, we don't want you to have to choose between doing big data or doing real-time data. So we offer near real-time analysis, very high fidelity and low latency, so you can get results over the entire data set, petabytes of information in a few seconds, and you don't need to think up front, what size do I want the nodes to be in my Hadoop cluster? How many do I want? Would I rather have 10 small ones, or would I rather have 4 large ones, and all those trade-offs? You don't have to worry about, my data's too big, how am I going to shard it? You simply say, put it into Google and transform it. And now we support ingestion of streamed data into BigQuery, 100,000 queries per second. So for example, of when we might find that useful, we have a customer in Seattle who have smart electricity meters. They have 40,000 customers whose meters report in once an hour, and so they can get all that information. They can get 40,000 queries per second, and then on top of the BigQuery engine, you build a live visualization. You can see where outages are happening. You can see all this information where previously you might have been able to take a small sample. You can actually run across the entirety of your data set. And there's a great video from Cloud Platform Live. We're going to show some links later on that I encourage you, if you're interested, to look at that. So, summary of the launches that we made last week. So we've build and test in the cloud, will be the demo we'll show you soon. Managed VMs on App Engine, 100,000 rows per second streaming into BigQuery. We've just launched a cloud DNS product, so we're able to handle both API-driven DNS and be able to use that for cross-region load balancing, and some new commercial operating systems that we're supporting now. That's really the message that we want you to take away in terms of the pricing, is that we're going to be tracking Moore's Law. This is not a one-off event. This is something that we're going to do over and over again. We're going to make sure if the price drops for us, it drops for you, and it seriously does. We're not going to leave that area under the graph. Everything that we're doing with the cloud platform at Google is about helping developers do what you love, helping you get rid of the worry about servers and tin and focus just on the functionality that brings you joy and that brings you revenue.